I was standing in the ICU, watching my husband lie motionless in a hospital bed, tubes and wires connecting him to machines that beeped and hummed. The doctor had just explained that another few hours without treatment, and Gerald would have died. Brain damage was still a possibility. They wouldn't know the extent of the injury until he woke up. If he woke up. The cause of this nightmare wasn't a heart attack or a stroke or any of the things you worry about at our age. It was a prescription error. The pharmacy had given Gerald the wrong medication. For 3 days, he had been taking pills that were slowly poisoning him, lowering his blood sugar to dangerous levels, putting him into a hypoglycemic coma that could have killed him. And when I called the pharmacy to report what had happened, they told me I must be mistaken. They said their systems had safeguards. They said errors like that simply didn't happen at their stores. But it had happened, and my husband was fighting for his life because of it. My name is Eleanor, and Gerald and I have been married for 49 years. We're both 76 years old, and until this happened, we were remarkably healthy for our age. Gerald took medication for high blood pressure and cholesterol. I took something for osteoporosis and a daily aspirin. Nothing unusual for people our age. We managed our medications carefully, kept lists, used pill organizers. We thought we were being responsible. Gerald had been going to the same pharmacy for 15 years. It was a large chain, not a small local place, but the pharmacists knew him. They knew his medications. He picked up his prescriptions on the same day every month, like clockwork. Everything was routine and safe. Or so we thought. On the third Tuesday of March, Gerald went to pick up his monthly prescriptions. 2 medications, one for blood pressure, one for cholesterol. He had been taking the same doses of the same drugs for years. Nothing had changed. His doctor hadn't made any adjustments. It should have been completely routine. Gerald came home with 2 prescription bottles. He showed them to me as he always did. We double-checked everything together. The labels looked correct. His name, the medication names, the dosages. Everything matched what he had been taking. We put the pills in his weekly organizer and thought nothing more of it. The next morning, Gerald took his medications with breakfast, as he always did. An hour later, he told me he felt a little dizzy. I asked if he wanted to sit down. He said no, it was passing. He thought maybe he had stood up too quickly. By lunchtime, he was sweating heavily. He said he felt weak and shaky. I thought perhaps he was coming down with something. A virus, maybe. I suggested he rest. He lay down on the couch and fell asleep almost immediately. He slept through the afternoon, which was unusual for Gerald. He never napped. When I tried to wake him for dinner, he was groggy and disoriented. He couldn't remember what day it was. His words were slurred. I was starting to get worried, but he insisted he was just tired. He ate a little soup and went to bed early. The second day was worse. Gerald could barely get out of bed. He was confused about where he was. He asked me if we were at our old house. We had moved 15 years ago. He stumbled when he tried to walk. His hands were trembling. He kept saying he felt strange, like he was floating. I wanted to call the doctor, but Gerald refused. He said he was fine, just fighting off a bug. He insisted I was overreacting. Gerald had always been stubborn about medical care. He believed in toughing things out. I should have insisted, but after 49 years of marriage, I had learned to pick my battles. I watched him take his morning medications. Everything looked normal, the same pills he had been taking for years. It never occurred to me that the pills might be the problem. By that evening, Gerald's condition had deteriorated significantly. He was barely coherent. His speech was nonsensical. When I checked his forehead, his skin was cold and clammy. I called our son Daniel, who lived 20 minutes away. I told him something was very wrong with his father. Daniel arrived within 15 minutes. One look at Gerald, and he said we needed to call an ambulance immediately. I was relieved someone else was taking charge because I was terrified and didn't know what to do. The paramedics arrived quickly. They checked Gerald's vital signs and immediately started an IV. One of them asked me if Gerald was diabetic. I said no, he had never had diabetes. The paramedic checked Gerald's blood sugar level and his face went serious. He told his partner they needed to move quickly. Gerald's blood sugar was critically low, 32. Normal is between 70 and 100. I didn't understand. How could Gerald's blood sugar be low if he wasn't diabetic? The paramedic asked if Gerald had taken any diabetes medication. I said absolutely not. He didn't have diabetes. He took blood pressure medication and cholesterol medication. That was all. They transported Gerald to the hospital immediately. Daniel followed in his car while I rode in the ambulance. I watched them work on Gerald, pushing medications through the IV, monitoring his vital signs, radioing ahead to the emergency room. The paramedic kept checking Gerald's blood sugar, watching the numbers slowly rise. At the hospital, the emergency room staff took over. They pushed more glucose through the IV. They ran tests, blood work, CT scan, everything. The doctor came to speak with me after about 2 hours. She said Gerald was in a hypoglycemic coma caused by extremely low blood sugar. They had stabilized him, but he hadn't regained consciousness yet. They would need to monitor him carefully. I asked how this could happen. Gerald didn't have diabetes. He hadn't taken any diabetes medication. The doctor asked me to bring in all of Gerald's medications so they could review them. Daniel drove to our house and brought back everything, all the prescription bottles, the pill organizer, even the over-the-counter vitamins. The doctor looked through each bottle carefully. When she picked up the blood pressure medication, she stopped. She looked at the label, looked at the pills, then looked at the label again. She told me these weren't blood pressure pills. These were glyburide tablets, a medication used to treat diabetes by lowering blood sugar. Someone had filled the bottle with the wrong medication. I felt like I had been punched. I told her that was impossible. We picked up the prescription 4 days ago from the same pharmacy Gerald had used for 15 years. We checked the label. Everything looked correct. She handed me the bottle. The label said lisinopril, Gerald's blood pressure medication. But the pills inside were not lisinopril. They were glyburide. Gerald had been taking diabetes medication for 3 days. Medication that was lowering his blood sugar to dangerous levels. Medication that had put him in a coma and could have killed him. The doctor said Gerald was lucky we brought him in when we did. Another few hours, and the brain damage from prolonged hypoglycemia could have been permanent or fatal. She said they would need to monitor him in the ICU until he regained consciousness, and they could assess whether there had been any neurological damage. I stood there holding that prescription bottle, staring at the label that said one thing while the pills inside were something completely different, and I couldn't process what had happened. A pharmacy had given my husband the wrong medication, a simple, preventable error, and it had nearly killed him. Daniel called the pharmacy immediately. He spoke to the pharmacist on duty, not the same one who had filled Gerald's prescription. Daniel explained what had happened. The pharmacist kept saying it wasn't possible. He said their system had multiple checks. Every prescription was verified by the pharmacist before being dispensed. Errors like this didn't happen. Daniel told him to check his records, check what medication was dispensed under Gerald's name 4 days ago. The pharmacist put him on hold. When he came back, his tone had changed. He said he would need to investigate and call us back. He never called back. Gerald remained in the ICU for 6 days. For the first 2 days, he was unconscious. I sat by his bed, holding his hand, watching the monitors, praying he would wake up. The doctors explained that they had reversed the hypoglycemia, but his brain had been deprived of adequate glucose for an extended period. They couldn't predict how much damage had been done. On the third day, Gerald opened his eyes. He was confused and weak, but he was awake. Over the next few days, he gradually regained his strength and mental clarity. The doctors ran cognitive tests. Miraculously, there appeared to be no permanent brain damage. Gerald had been incredibly lucky. While Gerald was recovering, I was dealing with the pharmacy. I called corporate headquarters and filed a formal complaint. I explained what had happened, that their pharmacy had dispensed the wrong medication, that my husband had been in a coma for 6 days, that he could have died. The corporate representative was apologetic but defensive. She said they took these matters very seriously. She said they would conduct a full investigation. She said someone would call me within 48 hours. No one called. I called again. I was transferred multiple times. I left messages. I sent emails. Finally, after a week, a regional manager called me. He said they had completed their investigation. He said the error occurred because a pharmacy technician had accidentally filled the wrong prescription. The medication had been labeled correctly, but the pills placed in the bottle were incorrect. He said the technician had been retrained. He said they had implemented additional safeguards to prevent this from happening again. He said they took full responsibility. Then he said that the pharmacy's insurance company would be in touch to discuss compensation. I asked about the technician. Had they been disciplined? Was there a history of errors? The manager said he couldn't discuss personnel matters. He said the technician was a valued employee who had made an honest mistake. An honest mistake that nearly killed my husband. The insurance company contacted us 2 weeks later. They offered to reimburse us for Gerald's medical expenses not covered by Medicare. They offered an additional $10,000 for pain and suffering. In exchange, we would sign a release agreeing not to pursue any legal action and to keep the terms of the settlement confidential. $10,000. For 6 days in the ICU. For the terror of watching my husband in a coma. For the permanent fear I now live with every time either of us takes a medication. I told them absolutely not. We hired an attorney who specialized in medical malpractice and pharmacy errors. He reviewed the case and told us it was strong. The pharmacy had a clear duty of care. They had breached that duty through negligence. Gerald had suffered significant harm as a direct result. We had documented everything, but he also warned us that these cases were difficult. Pharmacies have powerful legal teams and deep pockets. They fight aggressively to avoid setting precedents. The case could take years. And there was always the risk that a jury might not award significant damages because Gerald had ultimately recovered without permanent injury. We decided to move forward anyway, not just for us, but because I wanted the pharmacy to take responsibility. I wanted them to acknowledge that their error had nearly killed someone. I wanted them to implement real changes so this wouldn't happen to someone else. The pharmacy's lawyers fought everything. They questioned whether the error had actually occurred at their pharmacy. They suggested Gerald might have taken someone else's medication by mistake. They implied that Gerald's condition might have been caused by something else entirely. They dragged out discovery, filed motion after motion, delayed at every opportunity. 2 years later, we finally settled. The terms are confidential, but I can say it was significantly more than the initial $10,000 offer. Our attorney fees took a large portion. What we received wasn't life-changing money, but it was something. More importantly, the pharmacy was forced to acknowledge fault. But the settlement included a non-disparagement clause. I'm not allowed to publicly name the pharmacy chain. I'm not allowed to discuss the specific details of their negligence. I'm not allowed to warn other people about the dangers of using their stores. That clause bothers me more than anything, because people should know. Seniors especially should know that pharmacy errors happen more often than anyone wants to admit, that the systems that are supposed to protect us can fail, that we need to be vigilant every single time we pick up a prescription. Gerald recovered physically, but the experience changed him. He's anxious now in ways he never was before. He triple checks every medication. He insists we verify the pills against online images every time. He keeps detailed logs of everything he takes. The trust he had in the medical system is gone. I'm telling this story because pharmacy errors are a hidden epidemic. Studies show that medication errors harm at least 1.5 million people annually in the United States. Many of these errors occur in pharmacies. Many affect seniors who take multiple medications and are more vulnerable to drug interactions and adverse effects. Here's what I learned that could save your life or the life of someone you love. First, never assume a prescription is correct just because it comes from a pharmacy you trust. Pharmacies make mistakes. The people who work there are human. Systems fail. Always verify. Second, know what your medications should look like. Take a photo of each pill when you first start taking it. Compare every refill to that photo. If the pill looks different, different color, different shape, different markings, question it immediately. Don't just assume the manufacturer changed the appearance. Verify with the pharmacist. Third, learn the names of your medications, both brand names and generic names. Know what each one is for. If you pick up a prescription and the purpose listed on the label doesn't match what you know, stop. Ask questions. Fourth, if you take multiple medications, use a medication management system. A pill organizer can help, but also keep a written list of all your medications, doses, and purposes. Review it regularly with your doctor and pharmacist. Fifth, if something feels wrong after starting a new medication or refill, don't ignore it. Call your doctor immediately. Don't wait to see if it gets better. Gerald's stubbornness nearly killed him. Sixth, if you or a loved one experiences symptoms of hypoglycemia, confusion, weakness, sweating, trembling, rapid heartbeat, and you're not diabetic, check your medications immediately. Low blood sugar in non-diabetics can be caused by certain medications, and it can be fatal if not treated quickly. Finally, if a pharmacy makes an error that harms you, document everything. Keep the medication bottles. Take photos. Get medical records. File a report with the State Pharmacy Board. Contact a lawyer who specializes in pharmacy malpractice. Don't accept a small settlement and a non-disparagement agreement if you can avoid it. Gerald is 78 now. He's healthy and active. The coma left no lasting physical damage. But I look at him every day and think about how close we came to losing each other because someone put the wrong pills in a bottle. A simple error, a preventable mistake. And it nearly cost us everything. The pharmacy where this happened is still operating. The technician who made the error is probably still working there. The systems that failed to catch the mistake are still in place. And somewhere, right now, another senior is picking up a prescription, trusting that the pills in the bottle match the label. I hope their trust isn't misplaced. But I know, from terrible experience, that it might be. Check your medications. Every single time. Your life might depend on it.